how much of an advantage in a fight are all those muscles? Does all that extra muscle make you tough? Does it make you tougher than you would otherwise be? Well, it is absolutely true. You can argue it all you want to, but you're wrong. It's absolutely true that all things being equal, that additional muscle is an advantage. But that's all things being equal. And there comes a tipping point, even at best case scenario, when all that muscle can no longer be an advantage, but begins to become a detriment. Because all things just are not going to remain equal, no matter how hard you try, beyond the point. Beyond the point, it's just not going to happen. You know, when you look at guys the size of pro bodybuilders today, big pros, no, they're over that tipping point. They're over that tipping point. No matter what kind of condition they are in as far as cardiovascularly, how well-rounded their fitness program is, which it is probably not very well-rounded, but let's just say best case scenario, they did everything within their power. It was a primary importance to them, which it isn't. It just isn't. That's not the primary focus. That's not their primary target. Yeah, to gain all that size, you know. They're gaining all that size for competition. They're gaining all that size just for appearance. They can keep up with it to a point, but they're past the apex. They're over the other side, right? It would now be a disadvantage as opposed to if they had a little less muscle. That's just the reality of it. But what about, say you got a guy, he's a 175 pound guy. Let's say he's average height. What's average height now? 5'10"? Is that average? I don't even know. 5'9"? I don't even know what's average. Let's just pretend he's, I don't know, 5'9", 5'10", 175 pounds. Let's say he is already a really good fighter. That's what his thing is. He's a trained fighter, whatever discipline. Now, if he gains 10 pounds of muscle and he is 185, is that an advantage or a disadvantage? All things being equal, it would be an advantage. But all things being equal means that his cardiovascular conditioning has to parallel that muscle gain, that size increase. Whatever, and to a degree, it has to exceed that. It has to be even greater than. Why? Because if it's just equal to, he's still not going to be as effective, or he's not going to be as fast. You know, to a point, you can keep up to a point, but eventually, real quick, his conditioning becomes more work to be as fast as if he was, 10 pounds lighter. So, yeah, it's an advantage, and it's a worthwhile advantage to a lot of guys in the fight game, various disciplines, to a point. Myself, when I was like 150 pounds fighting, I had no issues. I was fine. And in the street, no problem. No problem. As a trained, classically trained, disciplined combatant, yeah, in the street, yeah, it was a game changer. It's a massive advantage. In the ring, in competition, it was what it was. Everybody is trained. You're not fighting untrained guys at that point. But I trained to be a fighter. I didn't train just to win trophies or medals. I trained to be a fighter. That was the whole point to it. That was why I started learning to fight. It's to fight, not as a sport. I competed as a sport because that enabled me to be able to spar with other trained fighters. Just for the experience of it and to help me progress. And as a measuring stick, But when I got to be 170, 180, you know, which is about the heaviest I fought. The heaviest I fought was sub 200 pounds. Or is that accurate? It is. The heaviest I can say I really fought competitively was under 200 pounds. I did play around with the idea of fighting again competitively when I was quite large. I had a really good opportunity come, which I passed up, and it's probably better that I did. But I almost jumped on it. And this was probably around 2006, and it was a lot bigger. And I figured I would come down to about 230 and fight. And I played around with a few guys that were sharp, much younger than me, a good 10 years or more younger than me, 15 years younger than me, that were in the fight game currently, and that were on top of their game. And a couple of the guys I did extremely well, so that was encouraging, but that was only because they were intimidated initially. They were intimidated, and that was their fucking downfall, you know? Right off the line from get, they were intimidated. And that gave me a huge, monstrous advantage, which I took care of. I took advantage of that. But if I fought a guy that was not intimidated by me, I fought a really good fighter. It was really fast. It was a good friend of mine. And he would have destroyed me. He would have destroyed me. And that's what convinced me, nope, it's been too long and I'm too heavy to fight. I'm too heavy to fight. These kids are going to knock the shit out of me. So I didn't do it, and it's a good thing I didn't. But, you know, when you gain so much muscle, so much size now, oxygen has to feed that muscle. All that additional muscle is fed by an expanded and extensive capillary system. You know, an extensively overdeveloped capillary system is developed to feed all that muscle. And it does, but then if you ask that muscle to perform, you're going to have oxygen deprivation very quickly unless you really have made that a primary focus of your training. And there's a point in no return. And yeah, there are guys that can do it. There are guys that can fight at 260. There are guys that can fight at these weights. But they really train hard. They really train hard to be able to do that. Your typical guy, which it's not even typical, it's atypical, you're even going to run across somebody with this much muscle, you know, and get in a brawl with them. But just because they're that big, is that going to be an advantage? I'm going to tell you the reality is probably 99% of the time, it's not going to be an advantage that they can cash in on. It's not going to be an advantage that they can employ because they're going to gas out. They will gas out. No matter what they say to you, they're going to gas out quickly. They're going to gas out quickly. If you don't get knocked out or choked out, you know, or just completely overcome in the first couple minutes, at that body weight, all that muscle to feed, you know, then they're going to be done. They're not going to be much of a threat after that. You would probably have a more difficult time, you know, with somebody that was 40 pounds lighter, for real, or even lighter than that, you know. I mean, I know this, and I'm in really good cardiovascular conditioning. I know, see that? But you know what? I train hard. I do my cardio, man. I do my cardio. I can do a video while I'm doing cardio. And I'm on an incline, you know. It may not look like it, but if you look at the wall behind me, you look at the mantle on the fireplace, you see the incline on that fireplace, and the camera's level with me, and I'm level. That's because that treadmill's on that incline. You know, I'm on an incline, and I'm moving at about 3 miles an hour. I'm moving at about 2.8, 2.9, or 3 miles an hour, sometimes 3.2. You know, so I can still talk. I can make a whole video like that. Yeah, how many of these guys you think can do that? You know, maybe a Jay Cutler could do that. You know, maybe some of these These guys that do a lot of cardio can do that. Okay, so that is going to be, the majority of guys aren't even going to be capable of doing that. They're not going to be able to do that. Okay, so the guys that can do that, well, have they trained that they can actually employ those muscles as in to generate power, right? Force times speed equals power. Have they trained to generate power? That kind of a workload on their cardiovascular system. Do they have that kind of conditioning, right? So the first hurdle is, can you even get on a treadmill and move like that and not get winded and just go and go and go at that weight? I can. All right, but then that doesn't mean that I can generate power, that I could generate the kind of power that I need, to make these muscles do what I need them to do, for very long. On a treadmill, that's one hurdle. Okay, so you can do that. That still doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get in there and mix it up with somebody that's in good shape without gassing out quickly, gassing out very quickly. And when you're out of oxygen, I don't care how hard you are, how tough you are, when you're out of oxygen, you're fucking done. Doesn't matter how much will you got, how much heart you got, you're done. And that's saying if you even have all that. If you even have all that. Because like the old saying goes, right? It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. How much fight is in the dog? So you can take anybody that could actually do that, potentially. You can wipe away half of those guys very easily, at least, that they just don't have the heart. Wipe away half of them, they don't have the heart. Okay, so then if you're a guy that has any kind of a classical training, any kind of real training, right? And if people tell you, well, boxing and all, that's nothing on the street, that's no good on the street, that's not true. You better think about that. Because let me tell you about boxers. Boxers are fast. They're fast. They're very fast. If they're any good, they're not just a guy that just recreationally, shadow boxes or hits a bag or something, They're very fast and have really good hand-eye coordination. They don't waste effort. They don't waste energy as much as just your average Joe Blow. By no means. There's no comparison. So, yeah, being a really good, accomplished fighter in a ring where there's rules and all, yeah, that doesn't mean that translates to the street. So again, all things being equal, but things are never going to be equal. They're not all going to be equal. Not all going to be equal. But that trained guy, his hands are faster. He has a much higher degree of accuracy, So there's that. But muscle, is it an advantage in a fight? Does it make you a tough guy? No. No, but if you were a tough guy already, and if you had any kind of training and you were a fighter, if that was your shtick and you got a little bit heavier and you could keep up with that training-wise and conditioning-wise, you're going to be a more dangerous fighter, but that's why they have weight classes. That's why there are weight classes. That's why. But that's a lot of ifs. That's a lot of ifs. How many guys are you going to run into that check all those boxes? You're probably not going to. You're probably not going to. And most of the guys that would have that much discipline, they're not of that nature typically. You don't typically run into guys that have been around that long with that much discipline and have actually, been tried enough or long enough and enough times. They're usually very humble. Those are usually humble guys. Those are usually guys that don't have anything to prove. They're comfortable and they're very comfortable in their skin, which most men are not. Maybe they are to varying degrees, but most truly are not that comfortable. It's very easy to challenge them and, they'll overreact because their egos are rather frail, fragile, brittle. No matter what they say, the more they defend that and say, oh, this bullshit, that's a red flag and an indicator that's true. Because if they're totally comfortable, they just don't care. So, odds that you're going to run up against some big muscle fucking behemoth that's going to be a danger just because he's a big muscle-bound behemoth? No. And then there's other shit to consider. Luck. Luck. All right, so if you both got heart, if you're both in pretty good shape, You know, then what's the training like between the two of you? What's the background and history and experience and all this other horse shit, right? And then luck comes into play. Almost anybody can get lucky. Almost anybody can get lucky and get one in. Almost anybody can get lucky and get one in. And then there are other instances, and I've experienced it and I've seen it, where you could be so adept at fighting other trained fighters, other awesome trained fighters. You could be really good at that, man. And you could be demolishing guys. And then you could fight a guy that has no training at all. It's just wild and crazy. And it's so fucking foreign to you at that point that you would prefer to fight a trained guy. That's true. And then there are other cases where you fight an untrained guy and it's just like, Jesus God, this motherfucker is not even worth the effort, you know, because it could just be nothing, a cakewalk, piece of cake, easy day. So there's really no hard, fast rule. I mean, I have seen and experienced it all over the place, all different ways. It's really not predictable. It's really not very predictable, except the standard usual rule is most bullies, they're not really, they're usually paper tigers, most. Now I'm saying this is coming from the perspective of a trained guy that had extensive training, that had extensive experience on the street, in competition, you know, but now is older and much heavier, you know, much bigger than in my prime at one. So that's why I stay on top conditioning, folks. That's why I stay on top at conditioning, because it's a messed up society out there now. And, you know, I'm not a person, I certainly don't want to go out there and roll around on the fucking concrete or the asphalt or gravel with another grown man. I certainly don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go out there and be banging with them. I don't want to do it. You know, if I have an option, I won't, you know. But nonetheless, man, you just got to be prepared, because you don't know what can happen in today's world, man. People could come through your front door. You know, you don't know what the hell could happen. You might not have another better option. And so that's why I'm so hardcore on the conditioning aspect. That's why I do a multitude of crazy fucking fitness shit outside and uphill and on uneven terrain and weighted, and, you know, and why I do so much cardio. Every day I do cardio. Every day. And soon I'll be doing 2 a day, you know. But that's why, man. That's why. Because anything can happen. And, you know, there's no point in walking around thinking you're a badass just because you got more muscle than somebody else, because you may really find out something surprising, you know, because there may be a guy that's 40, 50 pounds lighter than you that tattoos you all up while you're trying to catch your breath, you know, or just looks like a whirlwind. He's so much faster than you are. So that's all. We all don't need to be fighting and brawling anyway, right? Are we grown men or are we children? Yeah. That's the reality of it. That's all I got to say on the point. You guys take care. Have an awesome evening. And peace, man. Peace. Peace, love, and hair grease.